We've had a little bit of time now to go over the win against NAU. So now it's time to figure out what we can celebrate, what we can improve on, and the goals we can set moving forward for Arizona State's next game against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast.
Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. I am Richie Bradshaw. As always, I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen of the day. Remember, the podcast is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. If you would like to check us out on a visual platform, of course, wherever you do get those podcasts, though, hit like and subscribe. Turn on those notifications so you get an update every time we post new content, which is Monday through Friday. In order to stay in touch with all our content, excuse me, make sure that you follow me on Twitter. You can find me at RichieBrads36. Follow the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils, and stay in touch with everything going on with Sun Devils all the time. I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Whew, I apologize right out the gate. Allergies are acting up a little bit tonight, so I apologize for all the heavy breathing. I'm going to do my best to step away from the mic when I do need to take a breath so it's not obnoxious and in your guys' ear. Let's go ahead and jump into this episode of the podcast, though. So we're going to be looking at the things that the Sun Devils did right, the things they need to do better, and the goals they want to set for themselves moving forward. We'll break up each of those into each section of this podcast. Starting off with celebrations. I think the most obvious one has definitely got to be the way they ran the football. Over 250 yards on the ground, over 100 yards for number one running back Xavier Valladay, 4 total rushing touchdowns, 2 between Valladay and 2 between Emory Jones. Also had some really good production from the rest of the guys. Daniel Legato was very, very good. Tevin White got heavily involved and showed some really good flashes of potential greatness for the team. George Hart III was also getting involved. And overall, just the way the offense was able to incorporate so many different guys and effectively prove that they could, run the ball at will no matter who was in the backfield, that's a huge win for them. Especially because I've mentioned before that this is going to end up being the strength and the potential identity of this Arizona State Sun Devils football team in 2022. Very, very important that you were able to establish that in week 1 and truly capitalize on an opportunity to showcase that kind of potential. That's exactly what they did. It also helps when your offensive line is just paving the way for everybody to run through. It was just a great overall performance across the board for the run game. Again, the gaps and the fits were perfect from the offensive line. Everybody executed their job very well, which brings me to my next celebration is the execution. This goes beyond the offense too. On defense, everyone was doing their jobs. It was a very disciplined and impressive performance that the Sun Devils put out on both sides of the ball. Overall, I feel like there was just very little things that you could look back on and say, I wish we did this a little bit differently. The offense did its job to produce points, rack up the numbers for the statistics, and just control and dictate the pace of the game. When your run game is supposed to be your strength and you end up executing the way that you did, yeah, that's a huge plus. You're going to win a lot of football games when you do that. Even the passing game definitely looked, serviceable. Emory Jones completing over 70% of his passes. He had a couple plays where they were stopped, not like super short of the goal line, with the exception of Messiah Swinson tackled inside the 5 early in the game. But you were able to get a lot more success than I think you maybe were expecting. Again, when you only pass the ball 18 times, though, compared to almost 50 rushing attempts, it's hard to get a true sample size for how your passing game looks. But with that being said, It looks pretty dang solid. Have to be happy with the way that they executed on offense. Defensively, one of the things that I highlighted going into this year is that you needed Merlin Robertson and Kyle Soley to really step up and embrace their roles as the leaders on the defense, not just from a veteran standpoint, but also from the standpoint that they're the linebackers and they're going to be calling out everything that's going on the defense. I thought they did a really, really good job on Thursday night of commanding the defense, setting up their teammates for success. And overall, it felt like the product that they put on the field, perfect. You can't ask for much more out of that. It felt smart. It felt safe. I'm not sure if you're hoping they kind of break out in the sense of like maybe how do I want to word this? Maybe breaking away from like simple tendencies and seeing if you can get away with some more, quote unquote complex stuff. Because remember, Herm Edwards did mention that his secondary was playing very vanilla defense, vanilla coverages, which tells me that they want to, kind of expand on that and see if they can't make make the defense a little more complex. Something that's going to challenge teams a little bit more. So I don't know how many steps forward that's going to be, but as of right now, defense did a very good job executing what they needed to do on Thursday night. Final thing I want to talk about before we get into our first break is the special teams. Look, the special teams is definitely not something that Arizona State has been necessarily like incredibly strong in over the last few years. You've had some solid guys. Christian Zendejas had a couple solid years kicking for you. Brandon Reese wasn't terrible a few years back. You had Michael Turk punting before he declared for the draft. Didn't get drafted and then got eligibility to go back to college, but didn't go to Arizona State. Totally weird situation. But this year feels very, very special. Eddie Zablicki is just a stud as a punter. He only had to punt one time the other night on Thursday. Unfortunately, that punt took a friendly NAU bounce, and it went from somewhere inside like the 10-yard line, closer to the 20. It wasn't anything, ideal. But when you're only punting one time, you'll take that. DJ Taylor felt a lot smarter with his decision-making. He wasn't bringing the ball out of the end zone when he was 8 yards deep. Punt returns. I think he only really had one return. Other than that, he was just smart. If the play wasn't there, he waved his hand and took the fair catch. The only opportunity he tried to do, he got swarmed, and that wasn't really on him because you're sitting there and you're like kind of hoping that he takes an opportunity just to see what he's got. And it was the best opportunity he had. So there's no reason to be upset with the way that DJ Taylor played as a return man. In fact, I would be very happy with the way that he was performing. Felt like he was just being a lot smarter. And then obviously kicking. You make all 8 of your kicks, 4 field goals, 4 extra points. You take that. 100% on the year so far. Amazing. Carter Brown was terrific. He already has half as many field goals made in week 1 as the Sun Devils had the entire year in 2021. Got to be incredibly, incredibly happy with the way that the offense, the defense, and the special teams were able to perform, execute, and everyone do their job correctly. All in all, definitely a lot of things to celebrate for the team. More than just these 3 that I highlighted, but I do feel like these are the 3 that are the most important to go over. Let's go ahead and hop into our first break. When we return, we're going to go over some improvements that the Sun Devils need to work on before going into their game against Oklahoma State this Saturday. It's the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. A word from our friends at LinkedIn. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a job post in minutes on LinkedIn.com to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help find you the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Do you know that every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions will apply. And as always, guys, remember that the Locked On Sun Devils podcast is free and available on all platforms. And we thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Going into our second segment now, what the Sun Devils need to improve on. Obviously, when you win 40-3, there's really not a lot that you're going to look at and be like, you know what? ASU really fumbled the bag on A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It was actually kind of hard to find a lot of things that I felt needed to be fixed. Some of the things a little more vague than others, honestly. Let's go ahead and start with the elephant in the room, though, and that's the penalties. Again, you were down from your average last year of almost 8 or 9 penalties a game. You only committed 5. Probably 5 more than you should have committed, though. ASU really played a clean game for the most part. I think the frustrating thing with the penalties is they were just very avoidable ones. And unfortunately, 2 of them cost you points. 2 of them nullified pick sixes that you had from Kawan Markham and from Chris Edmonds. Thankfully, Chris Edmonds' interception still stood, fortunately for them, while Markham's interception pick 6 was completely wiped off the board. These are easy cleanups because for Markham's interception, it was an offsides. You got to be smarter than that. You can't jump the snap with anticipation. You need to be patient. And then with Chris Edmonds' interception, it was a illegal block in the back. So that's another easy fix. That's nothing terrible. It's just going to be about execution on returns like that. Otherwise, it was a pretty clean game overall. The offensive line committed a false start. The defense had a holding, I believe. And there was one other penalty in there. Other than that, it really was a much better, much improved performance from the entirety of the team than what we were used to last year. And that's what's going to help you win games. Because when you're giving up 8, 9, 10 penalties a game, that's a lot of yards and a lot of opportunities for opposing teams to really capitalize on. And now that you're getting all ready to play a huge game and go up against Oklahoma State in Stillwater, you got to be darn near perfect. You can't afford to not be executing at the best level possible for yourself. You need to absolutely be on your A game. And that means not committing silly penalties. That's the word I'm looking for. Not committing silly penalties. From here, the other 2 are kind of nitpicky, I feel. One of the other things I highlighted was passing game consistency. I think more than anything, what I'm looking for here when I say that is just seeing the passing game not take a complete backseat to the running game. You know, you're not Army, you're not Navy. You're not trying to run the ball 60 times and only pass 5 times. I don't want to get to that point because there's very few teams that can actually accomplish that and make it work. I don't think ASU is one of those teams. ASU is definitely going to be more of like a 60-40 team than an 80-20 team. You need a decent balance, right? Obviously, you should be more run heavy. You have far more talent in the backfield and a quarterback who is very, 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 very adept as a runner. But you also still need to be able to pass the football. And they look solid. Again, Emory Jones, 13 of 18, he looked really good. He was consistently placing the ball in the chest of the receivers and where they could catch it. There was a couple balls that were off target, but overall, you had to be happy with what Emory Jones put out on the field. I really just want to see a little more of it. Again, only 18 pass attempts. Naturally, you're not going to get a lot of tape to evaluate and figure out whether or not there's going to be a strength or a weakness. When I put it in improve, I really just want to see that that volume increase a little bit more and just make sure that we can do it effectively. Finally, the last thing is finishing plays. And when I say this, I'm definitely looking more on the defensive side of the ball. I want to see our guys, close out plays. I feel like there were plenty of opportunities for sacks on Thursday night. Arizona State didn't end up getting any. They had a really nice handful of tackles for loss, but sacks are a good thing to have. It's not the end-all, be-all. Pressure rates are much more important, but Arizona State didn't have a lot of sacks last year. And as of right now, you don't have any this year, and you just played NAU. You should have walked out of that game with at least 2 or 3. I predicted 5. And there is talent in this pass rush. Just because Michael Matus is gone and Jermaine Lole is gone for various reasons, and you lost some guys last year as well, does not mean you shouldn't be able to rush the passer. You still have Joe Moore, you have Trevez Moore, you have Anthony Cooper. You have all that depth on the defensive interior. To me, there's no excuse to not be able to put up the sack numbers. The other thing I want to take a look at here is finishing plays in terms of form tackling. It feels like the last several years Arizona State has not been like quote unquote lazy, but their tackling has definitely not been a strong suit. There were a few instances of that again on Thursday night against NAU where these guys were just not making the easy tackles that they should have been making. That ultimately led to more chunk plays than you would like to give up. So you just need to find a way to clean up those tendencies to kind of, not necessarily make the correct form tackle and the textbook look. Don't go for the hit stick. That's just annoying. I don't care about that. No one should. It's cool for the highlight film, but you don't need to go for that every time. If you had 7 tackles in the game and didn't miss any, I will take that over 3 tackles that were all highlights every day of the week. I just want smart, disciplined football. ASU is entirely capable of it. So those are 3 improvements I think that the team could definitely go for. And we're going to go ahead and hop into our final break. When we return, we're going to go over 3 goals that the team should have for next week, and this week, I should say, against the Oklahoma State Sooners. Once again, this is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. And one more time, thank you guys so much for making the Locked On Sun Devils your first listen every day. Do me a favor, make your second listen the ultimate pro football preview for 2022. An 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Couple more things to talk about. Goals moving forward. One of these has to do with one of my improvements I brought up. You just want to see improvement in the passing game. I thought that there were 2 guys that stood out to me. Messiah Swinson and Andre Johnson. Not surprisingly, they had the most volume. I want to see some of the other guys step up. I want more Cam Johnson opportunities because I think he's a very good football player. I want to see more flashes of Brian Thompson. I thought that he looked pretty dang solid on Thursday night, but I would like to see him get a little more involved in the offense and in the best way. Not because he didn't produce, but because I think he's capable of those exciting plays. So I just want to see Thompson get a little more involved. I would love to see more Jalen Conyers because I am a Conyers fan. Keep giving the ball to Messiah Swinson. Dude clearly has some kind of edge with how big and strong and fast he is. Keep getting the ball to Andre Johnson. The dude is a physical specimen with some really good deep speed. He could potentially be a really nice big play for you guys. I also just want to see Emory Jones maybe take a few more chances. I thought he was very smart and precise with the football. He was definitely taking what the defense gave him. He was very smart about it. He wasn't taking too many risks, and he was taking some downfield shots, but it wasn't those like big plays down the field. It was more that like 20-yard, little higher than the middle of the field, intermediate sideline kind of stuff. I would love to see Jones just take a few more risks, and nothing insane. I'm not saying toss it 50 yards down the field in double coverage. No. But what I do want to see is Arizona State, who has very, very much relied on a deep passing game 2 to 3 times a game. I want to see Jones fit into that role. See if he's capable of testing a defense. He's got the arm for it. He's definitely going to need help from his receivers to step up. But yeah, just overall improvement in the passing game. It wasn't even a bad performance. I thought it was rock solid. It's just you didn't have a lot of volume, so show me that you're capable of throwing the football if you need to. Second thing, maintain your offensive identity and explore creativity. This is just kind of what I went over is, as much as I would love to see us throw the football more, that's not me saying pass it 30 times and only run it 20. You need to maintain your offensive identity, which is running the football, and you do it really, really good. Allow the run game to set up the passing game. When you have a good running game, that is going to keep defenses off balance, and it is going to force them into situations that they're not really going to be looking forward to. You bring them up closer to the line of to the line of scrimmage, and all of a sudden Elijah Badger is 20 yards down the field with 5 yards of separation. You need to be able to keep defenses honest, because if you can't find a way to pass the football, it's going to lead to teams stacking the box. So you need to maintain your identity as being a strong running team, but you also need to make sure that your passing game is good enough. Again, I think you should be a 60-40 team. I wouldn't even be upset if you were closer to 70-30. Just make it so that you're not entirely one-dimensional and you can't be shut down. Finally, the last thing is just to buckle down in the secondary. Again, Arizona State did a very good job on Thursday night of not giving up any big plays. But you were supposed to, because you played NAU. And, this was something that Herm Edwards highlighted is, the corners are young, they're inexperienced, and it really is a brand new looking secondary. So there's a lot of things that the team needs to work on. They did a really good job for what they were supposed to do on Thursday night. Show me that you can do it again. Show me you can do it against competition. You have to go up against the Cowboys this week. They're a good football team. Spencer Sanders is a good college quarterback. Make sure you're capable of biting down in that secondary. I'm not asking for 10 interceptions. You had 3. Only 2 of them counted, but you had 3. There's clearly playmaking ability in the secondary. Now just show me that you can do it on a week-to-week basis against Power 5 competition. Not so much NAU. That's really all I want to see. Other than that, though, there's really not that much to complain about for the Arizona State Sun Devils. A lot more to celebrate than there is to nitpick. And that's exactly what we had to do, is nitpick. But that actually is going to go ahead and wrap up this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. As always, thank you guys so much for making us your first listen of the day. Remember, the podcast is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, if you want to check us out on a visual platform. Of course, where we do have those podcasts, though, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Also, turn on those notifications so you get an update every time we post new content, which is Monday through Friday. To stay in touch with all that content, make sure you're following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36. Follow the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. And until next time, guys, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun.